Welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Here's your host, the Bitcoin Boomer himself, Gary Leland.
And welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show, brought to you at the BizTV studios in Arlington, Texas. Beautiful Arlington, Texas, where our great Texas Rangers are in the World Series this year. So wishing them lots of good vibes for sure. Now, this show is called the Bitcoin Boomer Show because I'm the Bitcoin Boomer, not because it's for boomers. This show is for anyone who's interested in Bitcoin. It's just you're getting information from a show hosted by a boomer. That's it. I'm a boomer. I admit it. I want to welcome my great producer, Stephanie. Stephanie, welcome. You set up everything for us on the show. You do the bottom thirds. You get all the information for the speakers and stuff.
Yeah.
The guests. Since you handled all that for this show with Madex, what did you think about Madex so far? And did you have any particular questions you wanted me to cover? Because you usually come up with pretty good stuff you want me to cover. So what were your thoughts? Give me your input.
Well, just some really basic things. Like I saw that BullBitcoin is out of Canada and did like Canadian transactions. I don't think we've had too many non-United States businesses yet. So this is really interesting and I want to learn more. And I saw that he was an artist and I really enjoy artist stories going into their art and stuff. So that'd be really cool to hear about today with Madex. Well,
I can tell you this, we're going to cover all that. We're going to cover all that and more. I guarantee you 100%. And you're correct. I would say that 95%, maybe even higher, of the people that have been on this show are from the U.S. So this is a little unusual for us to have someone from out of the country, even though it's Canada right across the border there. And one thing about BullBitcoin I was curious about, I guess, is why are they not in the U.S.? Why are they in Canada and then not the U.S.? So I want to go on to that also. But our guest today, in case you haven't figured it out, is Madex. Now, Madex is an artist, but he does a lot of Bitcoin artwork. But when you get down to it, he's not really a Bitcoin artist. He's just a talented artist, and I love his work. And he works for BullBitcoin, which we're going to cover also in this show. So if you didn't understand that, now you do. So please, tell your friends about this show. Make sure and share it with them. This show is for anyone who may be interested in Bitcoin. So if you know a friend that's like trying to learn about Bitcoin, or you think may be interested in Bitcoin, share this show with them and help them out. After watching this show for a while, if they watch enough episodes, they'll magically find themselves the most knowledgeable person about Bitcoin in the room. Not trying to sell you Bitcoin, just trying to educate you about Bitcoin. So we're going to go through a break from our sponsor. When we come back, we'll have Madex from Madex Art and BullBitcoin. And welcome back to the show. You know, it's an exciting time for Bitcoin. We're getting ready to hit the Bitcoin halving next April. Don't know the exact date, but that's getting ready to happen. And traditionally, over the past, Bitcoin has seen a rise going up to the halving, and then sometime after the halving, a super rise. And I think we've already seen the rise that's starting to happen before the halving. Over the last few weeks, we've gone from, 27 to 35,000 approximately. So that's a really nice rise, up 100% for 2023 on Bitcoin. But I'm not here to sell you Bitcoin. I want to make sure you know that going into it. The whole purpose of this show is to educate you about Bitcoin. The worst thing I feel that can happen is for Bitcoin to become the currency, one of the currencies of the world, and for you not to know it's happening until it's happened and you miss out on those opportunities. So this is just an educational show. Now on today's show, as I said earlier in the intro, we have a friend of mine, Madex, who's a Bitcoin artist. So let's bring Madex on and find out what's happening in Madex world. Madex, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, Gary. Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well.
Well, excellent, excellent. We met, I guess, in person in 2022 at BitBlock Boom in Austin, and that was a very good experience. That was a very good show, by the way. That was one of our biggest shows, but it was very nice to meet you there. We've talked online. This is only the second time, I guess, we've talked face to face, but I love what you're doing. I really love your art. We're going to go over all of that. But before we do, how about give people a quick, short bio? Who is Madex and what do you do?
Well, I'm an artist. I'm a creator and designer. I've been doing that my whole life. In 2013, I discovered Bitcoin and then had a long and winding journey to Bitcoin maximalism. In 2019, I was involved with the creation of BullBitcoin, which is a merger of two Canadian companies. And now I work as a creative director at BullBitcoin, doing all sorts of visual work and branding work. And then I also work on my own project, Madex, which sells fine art and does product design and development.
Real quickly, let's kind of take those in order. Tell us about BullBitcoin. That's in Canada. Now that you've mentioned that, people are going to be going, what in that world was he talking about, Bitcoin? So tell us what is BullBitcoin real quick.
Well, quite simply, BullBitcoin is just the greatest Bitcoin service provider in the world. We are a platform that allows Canadians to exist without a bank account in Canada and operate their life entirely existing on Bitcoin. So the primary service is bill payments. So any bill that exists in Canada, you're able to pay using BullBitcoin. And then we also deal with real estate purchases or high ticket purchases, or pretty much any service except for lending that you would go to your bank to work with. We have the ability to send money, fiat money to anybody in Canada. And then, of course, you have the ability to buy Bitcoin. So our business is converting Bitcoin into Canadian dollars and converting Canadian dollars into Bitcoin. And we've just recently expanded to Costa Rica. We're operating there. We have some more international expansion plans, and we're in the process of building our wallet app, which will be a seamless integration with our buying and selling and bills payment platform. And so that's in beta testing currently. And we are just, as a company, trying to set the standard for ethical Bitcoin practice. And we are 100% Bitcoin only. And, we all have skin in the game. We're a company made of Bitcoiners and built for Bitcoiners. So all of our products are very, very well thought out for anyone who's operating in the Bitcoin world. The key difference between us and a lot of others internationally that are conducting Bitcoin business is that we are non-custodial. So anyone operating with us has to have control of their own Bitcoin wallet. And that is the only way we operate. And we believe that is the only ethical way to operate within Bitcoin, is to promote self-custody and ensure that people understand, that their words are their Bitcoins and that we don't have anything to do with that. We're just simply a service to make interacting with the fiat world easier.
So if I lived in Canada and I had to pay my water bill, I would just go to the site, send in the Bitcoin equivalent, I guess, for the water bill. I'm just guessing here, and you can tell me if I'm right or not. And then I'd say, we're paying the water bill with this, and then y'all would convert it to fiat, send the fiat to pay for the water bill. Is that kind of how it goes?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly how it goes. So you can search for your payee, whatever it is, whether it's a phone bill, a tax bill, a water bill, and then you send us the Bitcoin, and we'll ensure that the bill is paid. Also, there is the service is discrete. So whatever bill you are paying, the payee has no idea that you've actually used Bitcoin to pay that bill. They just receive a bank transfer for the account number.
So BullBitcoin actually allows someone to live on the Bitcoin standard. Living on Bitcoin,
yes,
and doing everything they do in Bitcoin rather than in fiat. So if you're someone like I don't know, but let's say yourself, you work for a Bitcoin company, you may be getting paid in Bitcoin. Now you can live off of what you're being paid instead of going, okay, I got this Bitcoin, I need some fiat too because I got to pay these bills. So maybe you can only take part of your income in Bitcoin, and you got to take the other part in fiat to pay your bills, or go through a process with another person, then exchange it and then put it in your bank and then pay your bill. You've cut out a lot of work for someone trying to live on the Bitcoin standard, or someone who's being paid in Bitcoin, or someone who has a lot of Bitcoin. In any of those situations, if you're wanting to live on Bitcoin and you're in Canada or Costa Rica, did you say this is kind of like a needed tool for the for those people?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we don't have a card. So you do need to have if you want to be entirely bankless, you do need to have a credit card provider, but you don't actually need to have a bank account. And that's just for ease of making kind of everyday purchases. So what you can do is get a credit card with one of these companies, sort of. One is called Crotum, and you can then use your credit card and then pay off the bill using the bills platform within BullBitcoin.
Oh, so yeah, okay. So is the reason you're only in Canada and not you're in Canada, Costa Rica, but let me rephrase it. Is the reason you're in Canada, not in the United States, because of banking laws here versus Canada?
Yeah, it's because, the United States is different in a lot of ways, but I mean, the first reason is that the founders were all from Canada, and Canada is actually has a lot of Bitcoiners. It's a very Bitcoin rich country, and so there is quite a demand for services. We don't operate in the United States because, unfortunately, the United States is a long way off from the way the founding fathers originally intended to be, and there are decisions that would have to be made regarding customers and whatnot that do not align with our ethical stance. And do not align with our values. So we do not believe we will ever operate in the United States, but who knows, that could change into the future. I mean, Americans are used to dealing with all the layers of bureaucracy and the other kind of 3-letter agencies constantly harassing them. So perhaps one day, but for now, we're focused on expansion into Central America and Europe.
I find that being used to relying on the layers of bureaucracy has actually given people a false sense of security, and that they don't even think they can operate by themselves without these layers, banking layers, government regulations. They don't believe that they can do this themselves. So many people are hesitant to move over to Bitcoin because they just don't see how that can be done without someone taking care of them, or babysit them. We've been kind of trained to be dependent on other people to do things that people used to do for themselves and should be doing for themselves. Now we want someone to do them for us. We'll be right back with more of Madex, more Bitcoin talk, right after this word from our sponsor. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Today we're talking with Madex from BullBitcoin and Madex Art. Madex, welcome back to the show. By the way, tell Francis I said hello.
Thank you.
Tell Francis I said hi. I haven't seen him in a long time. Tell me, how did you originally find out about Bitcoin? What's your orange pill moment or story, or however you want to call it?
Well, at the time, I was looking into building a fintech app with a partner. And we had a bunch of these companies now exist, but we had the idea to create sort of an automated savings program so that you could connect your credit card or your debit card. So the idea being that you would set a tax rate for yourself on certain items, and then you would make purchases throughout the month. And then at the end of the month, X amount of your purchasing activity would be taken from your account and put into a savings account. So we were building out kind of the software for this and building out like a basic pitch deck, essentially. And then the time came to kind of bring it to banks, and it was instantly clear that the banking world was a pay-to-play game and is very closed off and monopolistic. So it looked at that time, we were looking to raise, we would need about like $10 million just to be able to have like tests starting to happen just in terms of getting through the regulation and red tape and whatnot. And at the time, I had a friend who I was living with who was very libertarian, and he was like, "Well, this whole thing should just be built out on Bitcoin." And then, so that was for my partner and I in the project. We were like, "What is Bitcoin?" And then I guess the rest is sort of history. And then, as with anything, when or as with most people's Bitcoin story, it took a long time. I mean, at that time, it was a very risky investment. There was a lot of issues, and so as everyone makes the same mistake, they didn't buy as much as they should have. And then around 2015, 2016, I started getting back into it, and then that kind of slowly ramped up with the push of kind of the whole like crypto and Bitcoin world coming to the spotlight. And then in 2018, I was just in the right place in the right time. My relationship with Dave Bradley in Canada, our friendship that we had established, basically led to being in a place to create the brand for BullBitcoin when it was time for that company to exist.
So, yeah, I think you're like most people. Most people find out about Bitcoin and then either they pass it, or if they do get some, they don't go in very deep. Then a few years later, they look at it and go, "Man, why didn't I do more of this when I was doing it? What was I thinking?" And then they start getting on the bandwagon. And once you go down that rabbit hole, I mean, it's just such a big rabbit hole to go down. Most people don't realize that once you start going down the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, you're studying Bitcoin, all of a sudden you realize what money is, all of a sudden you start finding out what banking's about, you find out what money was supposed to be in the US. I mean, you find all these things out that have been there the whole time, but you never took a second to find out. You didn't even know what money was. You find that out, that you never even knew what money was. Agree, or is that?
Yeah, I think that's yeah, I agree. I mean, how I've changed my strategy over the years, because I've pitched Bitcoin a million times, is I just don't pitch it anymore because I've realized it's inevitable. But if someone is lucky enough to get a pitch or even information from me, the best book I've been handing out currently is the Fiat Standard. I used to always give out the Bitcoin Standard because the Bitcoin Standard sort of united what the whole maximalist kind of culture had been talking about and discussing for a long time. And it was a great kind of summary of it all. But what I realized is that when you're handing the Bitcoin Standard to somebody who's not involved in Bitcoin, they may not even know that there is a problem. I think the average person just does not even understand the banking system, doesn't understand money, and doesn't understand why it's completely broken and why it's the root cause to all of the suffering that we're currently seeing in the world. So I think the Fiat Standard is a great text for explaining and enlightening the problem and saying like, hey, like this is how the system is currently working. And this is a basis in understanding of fiat, so that you can actually see the genius of Bitcoin and you can really understand like this does solve this problem. So now whenever I'm talking about Bitcoin to people who are new to it, the first thing I kind of go through is sort of, inflation, like what does it actually mean, and kind of get them to a point of like understanding that it is criminal. If you inflate a money above a supply cap, like that's a criminal act, that's theft. And that is, I think, the most important thing to understand on someone who's beginning their journey into Bitcoin.
The Bitcoin Standard and the Fiat Standard are both books by Saifedean Ammous. I think you're probably correct on the order to give those out, because to me, when you start giving out the Bitcoin Standard, there's so much information in there to begin with, like rhinestones and all these things that the just average person may not find of interest yet, which after they've read the Fiat Standard, then I think they would find that more interesting. Let me ask you real quick. In your opinion, we got about 3 minutes here for you to cover this. What is Bitcoin?
Well, Bitcoin is freedom from slavery, freedom from enslavement. It's the first time ever in human history that we have had a separation from, like old wealth and an ability for people to basically make their own decisions and build their own foundations and chart their own course. It's the first time ever that we can actually have a money that we can trust, and we have a future ahead of us where price signals will start to be accurate again. The only truth is price, and the fiat system and printing money into infinity completely screws up the incentives of the entire economy, and we get a whole bunch of noise and the government getting involved in people's business and people's transactions and thinking that they know better than individual actors just completely destroys price signals, and the entire economy has no idea what to focus on, what to do, what's important, and where we should all be focusing our time. So for me, that would be what I would describe Bitcoin as first, is just a way to organize our time and a way that nobody owns us anymore. Like if you run Bitcoin, if you own Bitcoin, you are, that's the first step in becoming a sovereign individual. And I would say that once you have Bitcoin, you are a sovereign individual. And then everything else from that starting point is just sort of protection and defense of that sovereignty. So I think that in the past, the only difference between a slave and a free man was the free man had the ability to carry a gun. And now I think that, but the root of being able to protect that right to carry a gun was all anchored in violence. Whereas now with Bitcoin, we have the ability to, protect ourselves with money, which is very unique and very exciting. And I think it means that the world is going to start to become a much better place because we'll be back to dealing with each other with money, and nobody's cheating at the game anymore. And so now we can actually trust each other and we can understand price signal from the economy.
Well, you put a lot of things out there for sure. Number one, printing money and inflation in general is probably the biggest theft of money that there is. The biggest way to steal money from the people, and the people it hurts the most are the people who have small amounts of money. People who have large amounts of money, sure, they lose the same percentage, but they don't feel it as bad as the people who don't have much money. If you're paying for gas to get to work, $500 a year, and it goes up to $800 a year, and you're making a minimal amount of money, that's a big increase on your pay. And if everything's doing that, your money's getting less and less and less and less. So that's a terrible thing. We'll be right back with Madex and more Bitcoin talk after this word from our sponsor. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show with Madex. Madex, question for you. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but what do you think about a lot of the talk in the Bitcoin world right now, at least ways in the US, it seems like, are the ETFs coming out. Now, Canada has an ETF, if I'm correct. But there's like 8 companies or 10 companies trying to do ETFs here. Am I correct that Canada has a physical ETF? And what are your thoughts on all this happening?
I believe we have the ability to buy futures, but we don't have spot.
Okay.
I am indifferent to all of this. The last people on earth I want to be learning about Bitcoin and getting involved in Bitcoin is the bankers and other fiaters. The only impact that they're going to have is negative, in my opinion. They come from this fiat system, and they will all take action to try and understand and or force Bitcoin to fit into the fiat system. And they have a lot of power and a lot of wealth behind them. The people who I want discovering and onboarding Bitcoin are tradespeople, the people who actually produce for this world. I have no interest or excitement in paper pushers getting involved in the space.
That's a real good opinion. And you're probably right. you're probably right. They're probably going to try to make this fit their mold because that's what they do, is make money, and what's been working good for them for hundreds of years, they want to keep it going just like that. Now, I want to talk about your art now, which I do have a piece here. I hope I can get this right. Madex gave me this at, I'll get it on the correct side in a minute, right? Boomer, huh? So this piece was given to me by Madex down at BitBlock Boom in Austin, Texas 2 years ago, which I like. And I wanted to show the back of this too. In the back, most art just has a canvas. The back of this piece is a piece of art by itself. And if you'll see right down here, he includes a Bitcoin wallet. I don't know if you do, and it has sats on it. Do you do that in every piece of art? Or is that your thing?
Yeah, I've been making an effort. I've been making the effort to do it on every single piece of art. Some pieces are like that I've been working on lately because I've been doing a lot of pencil crayon and kind of ink work on like board and paper. It's difficult to kind of attach the OpenDime wallet to the back of the piece in a way that I can be confident in its staying there. So it sort of depends, but anything that is created on a wood board that has like a fixed backing like that, I'm able to easily add the OpenDime. Recently, what I've been doing is putting the paper portraits into frames, and then I have the OpenDime is mounted in the frame. If you scroll down on that website page at the bottom, there's sort of an example of that. So the OpenDime wallet is not actually attached to the physical piece of artwork, but it's attached at the bottom of the frame. This is when the whole sort of ridiculousness around NFTs began, which was very obviously a just kind of reskin of the ICO scams, only this time instead of big corporations, the mark was artists and creators. I read through what they were talking about, and I realized that this can just be achieved with Bitcoin. The whole kind of idea with NFTs was to have a irrefutable digital signature from an artist attached to a JPEG. And so I mined a vanity address, 1MVDEX, and then I used that vanity address to fund the OpenDime wallets, which I attached to the back of the art. So effectively, it's an irrefutable digital signature. Like, I am the person who controls the keys to the 1MVDEX wallet. And you can see in the Block Explorer that I have funded the OpenDime with coins from that wallet. And so this is kind of a way that the artwork can be time-stamped. And it's a way kind of going into the future that even myself, the creator of the artwork, I have to be aware of kind of what I'm making, and I have to pick pieces from what I'm making to keep for myself, because in the future, when Madex is a massive internationally renowned project, I will not be able to just sign pieces of artwork and say that it's vintage from 2013. The only ones that I'll really consider kind of legitimate Madex original artworks will be the ones that have the OpenDime, and the OpenDime has a timestamp of me funding it, from the time it was created. And I think that's really important for sort of protecting kind of the value and the legitimacy of my art moving forward. I also created a website that watches all of the vanity address activity and watches all of the OpenDimes that I fund with that address. And from there, you can also see if the attached OpenDime actually still has the Bitcoin on it or not, or if the somewhere in its lifetime, the coins were moved. So on the website, it'll say whether it's verified or whether it's been voided. The bot actually just watches the blockchain to see if those coins ever move.
Well, that's pretty interesting. I'm looking at the back now as you're talking there of my piece, which I love. You really are so talented. I've noticed lately you've been doing a lot of art on money, I guess we'd say, art on fiat. I see bills that you've taken and you've turned into a piece of art. I just think you're very talented. I just want to say, and I recommend to anyone check out Madex's art, because I just really do like it. And this is one of my favorite pieces in my office here that I have here on this.
Well, thank you very much, Gary.
Yeah. So I do appreciate that. So I guess that's getting to what I'm talking about, though, going down the rabbit hole. It's when you really understand Bitcoin and you really get into it, it's more than just going down money. It's like it changes your whole life. I mean, now your art is Bitcoin related, and I don't know how many pieces you produce of art a year, but I imagine it's a large amount of the pieces are Bitcoin related art. I mean, so many people that come up to me at conferences, whether they're mine or someone else, and they say, hey, I'm trying to quit my job, or I just quit my job, or whatever, and I want to work in Bitcoin. I want to just do Bitcoin full time. I actually got rid of my physical stores so I could spend more time in Bitcoin because it affected me the same way. Do you find that common when you talk with Bitcoiners?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what's most exciting about Bitcoin is that it's something that actually really matters. It really matters, and it's really going to make an inconceivable, even with the greatest imaginations in the space, difference to the future. I mean, we really, once all these sort of systems are fixed, systems that we got a taste of from the formation of the original United States, and the power that true free market capitalism and accurate price signal has, I mean, the future is just extremely, extremely bright. And so anyone who's working in the Bitcoin space is really doing a part to kind of move that whole vision of the future forward. What I really appreciate in all Bitcoiners that I meet is that there is a care and attention to the future, and we are forward thinking. And I think that there's not anything else, there's no other space in the world that you could really work in that will have as big of an impact on every sector, every industry, our culture, our civilization, as Bitcoin. And, you know, I have a friend who's currently writing a book. He came from the private equity world. And after exiting his firm, he decided he wanted to dedicate his life to onboarding Bitcoiners, onboarding new Bitcoiners. And, you know, he's putting together this book based on, you know, everything that he knows, and he'll be just out there distributing that. And then, you know, there's other people working on their own sort of kind of small projects to push things. So every step that's taken is just a step towards a brighter future. And I think that anyone this is like brand new, so there is a space for everyone to work in this field. And you just gotta, whatever skills you have currently, you gotta figure out a way to kind of adapt them, or even just bringing Bitcoin into your existing industry, in my opinion, is working for Bitcoin.
And we'll be right back after this word from our sponsor. And welcome back to the show. I said this earlier, and I'm going to just repeat it one more time in case you came in late. The goal of this show is not to sell you Bitcoin. I don't have any Bitcoin to sell you. I'm not going to have an ad on the show where to go buy Bitcoin like you see with the people selling the gold, having gold commercials. I only want to educate you about Bitcoin. That's it. I just bring on guests who are in the Bitcoin world, different guests that can educate you from different angles. Hopefully one of these angles will enlighten you. And maybe one day you'll be standing around and someone is talking about Bitcoin and you find yourself knowing more about Bitcoin than anybody in the room. That's my goal. So let's get back with Madex, talking about Bitcoin, talking about BullBitcoin, talking about Madex art. And I like your train of thought there. When Madex art becomes a worldwide phenomenon, basically that's how I'm phrasing it, we're going to be able to know what was your early artwork from the Bitcoin on the wallets there. That's a good way to time that and authenticate that. Because by that time, I would think, well, maybe not. Maybe it's tomorrow. So I'm not thinking yet. But by the time you become the equivalent of maybe Picasso or Warhol or somebody, Bitcoin is going to be so high that if someone's making fake Bitcoin, fake art of yours, they're going to have to buy a lot of Bitcoin to put on the back, first of all. And so I thought that was a very clever idea. I didn't put it in that. I didn't realize why you were doing the open dime on the back. I didn't understand the system, but that makes a lot of sense. And at the moment, it's not a ton of Bitcoin, but if Bitcoin does what we all think it'll do, someday it will be a lot of Bitcoin, or a lot of money, or a lot of fiat.
I have the ability to airdrop Bitcoin to all of the pieces that have been distributed to the world. So I have a collection of all the addresses to all the open dimes. So at any time, I could choose to increase the value of my work.
I didn't even think about that. You could do airdrops, and all of a sudden, instead of however many sats are on here, could be 10 times as much. I mean, or even more. So, yeah, you've thought this out, obviously. So, how long have you been into doing the art part? Because I brought you on here for that, but since we went into BullBitcoin, I wanted to cover that. So I want to cover more of the art. Have you always been doing art? When did you start saying, I'm going to move into Bitcoin art compared to your regular art? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I would say, I mean, like right now, I found a very nice kind of niche foothold in the Bitcoin space, and it is where I derive the most pleasure from creating work. But I'm not a Bitcoin artist. I'm an artist, and I've been creating all my life, and I've been doing art shows since 2015. And I guess all that started was just somewhere I got the information to start with my strengths when I was kind of beginning my own entrepreneurial journey. And my strengths had always just been design, illustration, and anything to do with the arts. And so I kind of started to figure out how I could build a career around those skills. And then I really liked kind of the idea of when I looked out into the art world, I kind of noticed that sort of because of what's happened with modern art and the kind of the reduction of celebrating talented and skilled creators, I saw kind of an opening where it was like, well, I can come in here and kind of make artists rock stars again, and really kind of bring back sort of respect for the arts. Because in the Renaissance era, and I mean way back when we were on hard money standards, the artist was the most important character in any project. So in anything that was being created or anything that was being made, an artist was instrumental to that project. So, you know, the architects and engineers and the artists are what made the European cathedrals possible. And fiat has just stripped art out of pretty well everything, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But you know, now that we're putting up these box homes and these basic, buildings that have no character and products that have no character, the artist's role and sort of the connection with the magical and the divine has been pulled out and significantly reduced in the world. And I just wanted to do whatever I could to really bring that back. And then, you know, knowing about Bitcoin along, and once I kind of started to begin getting into economics and understanding money and understanding Bitcoin better, I realized that, you know, the real reason that the magic was being killed in the world is because the money is broken, and that we are having the value of our time stolen. And so adding Bitcoin, you know, the mission that Bitcoin seeks to complete into the work was just sort of the perfect match of the kind of two philosophies I was carrying. And so now, you know, moving into the future, like my goal really is to break in the fine art world as Madex And then the root and the story of every single piece that goes out there, it all leads back to Bitcoin. So like my dream would be that people discover Madex art, in a gallery somewhere, and they love the artwork, and because of their love of the work, they begin to investigate it more. They begin to investigate the art studio more, and that leads them to Bitcoin. I think that we need to send the signal, send the message, and that's my goal with Madex, is to kind of be sort of a Trojan horse for Bitcoin information, and then also to make an attempt to return the world to an appreciation of objective beauty.
So, those are good goals, without a doubt. And it's, like I said, I just can't say enough about your art. I've been watching you ever since 2022 on Twitter and watching your posts, and I encourage everybody to follow Madex and watch his stuff. One thing I do want to go over with the short amount of time we have left is earlier you mentioned NFTs. They're like ICOs. Could you just explain that real quick?
Well, so the ICO, like the scammers, basically they had their new like buzzword lock, which we all remember from back then. But basically, the goal of the ICO was to create a copy of Bitcoin and then go and propose it to some company like Amazon or any other kind of major corporation in the space, and get a news headline that X giant corporation was thinking about working with this particular coin. And that was like the absolute best thing that these scammers could achieve. They were able to leech off of the credibility of an existing brand in the corporate space to drive speculation on their casino product, their scam product. And then that only worked for so long before corporations wised up and realized that, okay, so this blockchain technology is no different than, a database. In fact, it's more complex and completely redundant. So then they were no longer willing to kind of play that game. They were in this phase of sort of investigating and being curious about it. So then the scammers had to find a new mark, and they moved to artists and creatives. Musicians and filmmakers and artists like painters. And the pitch was sort of the same. You want to be ahead of the game on this new technology. It's going to change the world. It's all this stuff. And they leech then from the artist-based brand, their existing credibility as a filmmaker or a musician, to produce a scam project.
Good enough. Hey, Madex, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. I've enjoyed the conversation completely, and I look forward to seeing you soon. I'm sure I have not run into you anywhere since 2022, but I'm sure we're going to run into each other somewhere. Thanks again, and everybody stay tuned. Right after this break, we'll be right back after this break from a word of our sponsor. Thanks. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. We've had a great show today. Madex was a great guest, very informative, and we found out a lot about his art, which, like I said, I think he's a great artist personally, but that's just my opinion. Someone else may not like his art because we all have our own opinions. Stephanie, what'd you think of today's guest? Give us your insights there. Find anything interesting? What was your viewpoint?
I like the fact that he was also an artist, and he thought through attaching or associating the open dime wallet with his art to show actual like provenance, the timestamp of when the art was like created or given. I wasn't super clear which that was, but yeah, that part of it kind of, because I've heard of the fact that you can like mail yourself your art through the post office, and that timestamp alone kind of legitimizes it. So this is kind of like the Bitcoin version of that, which is really cool.
Doing art on the Bitcoin standard, I guess, is what we're saying there. But you're right. Actually, like I said, my piece of art from him has an open dime on it with Bitcoin on it, and I didn't even realize the purpose of it. I knew it was there and I thought it was cool, but I didn't realize the purpose that it gave it a timestamp of when the Bitcoin was sent and put on the wallet that's connected to the art. So that was kind of interesting. Hey, I want to make sure everybody knows about the book I helped write. 8 of us got together for a week down in Austin, Texas, and wrote a book about Bitcoin and the American dream. So if you want to share a book with someone like we were talking about with Madex, this is a book you can share with them. They'll have the basics of Bitcoin, and it's like they could read it on a flight, and it would give them some information about Bitcoin. So do check that out. We also want to tell you about our Bitcoin meetups in Dallas. We normally do a meetup every month in Dallas, Texas at meetup.com/bitblockboom. Meetup.com/bitblockboom. So do check that out. Make sure and follow me on Twitter at Gary Leland or at BitBlockBoom if you want to follow my conference. My conference I do in Texas every year. First 4 years we're in Dallas. Last 2 years we're in Austin. This year we're celebrating our 7th year, longest running Bitcoin conference on the planet. And we're doing it back in Dallas. So check out bitblockboom.com. I want to make sure and give thanks to my producer, my great producer over here, Stephanie, and BizTV for allowing me to use their studio. And I want to make sure you know, I'm going to tell you this one last time. Share this show with your friends. If you know anyone who's interested in Bitcoin, or just you think would be interested in Bitcoin, share this show with them. While this is the Bitcoin Boomer Show, it's not for boomers. I just happen to be a boomer who likes sharing information about Bitcoin. So that's it for today's show. We'll see you next week. Have a good day, and thanks for watching.